Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. A few words before I do the opening words. January for Soul Matters, which is a curriculum we're using this year, is imagination as a topic. And one of my very favorite art forms, which I've done for many years, is poetry. And so I thought it would be a wonderful idea if we could have several people read poetry that is important to them and why it is important and perhaps why it sparks the imagination. So I was very appreciative that Corrine and Joyce and Josh were willing to do this service together. So these opening words from Paul Engel. Poetry is ordinary language raised to the nth power. Poetry is boned with ideas, nerved and blooded with emotions, all held together by the delicate, tough skin of words. Paul Engel. So welcome to this service yet again. I would remind everyone that during the service, you can enter a personal joy or sorrow in the chat room, just as Rick just did. I will summarize them when we get to that part of the service. I would also note that every week we offer our financial gifts to sustain this church and its work in the community. And to donate electronically, please visit the church website at umeadville.org. And you can also mail your checks. This month's Share the Plate recipient is the Meadville Soup Kitchen, which I'm sure many of you know about, and I and others have taken part in for a number of months in the last year. So Joyce will read the chalice lighting words as I light the chalice here in the sanctuary.
Recognizing the beauty around us and within us in voice and spirit, we gather to light our chalice. May we savor the beauty of our abundance and diversity, always cherishing one another and our earth. May we remember to inhale the lusciousness in life, knowing that we are a people of beauty.
So I will read the covenant and mission, and when you're at home, if you would like to say it also, please mute so we don't have 1,000 voices saying things at all at once. Our covenant is to be a loving, joyful community that nurtures spiritual growth, promotes compassion, social responsibility, and service in an atmosphere of mutual trust. Our mission is to be a faith community devoted to love and respect, reason, and justice. And now we will have a hymn, which if you want to sing at home, you're more than welcome to. And this hymn is from one of the ones, I believe, from the Pittsburgh cluster that Amy was able to procure. I am that great and fiery force.
I am that great and fiery force,
Before we enter the breakout rooms after the three people make their remarks, the art form that sparks your imagination. For many people, it could be poetry. For others, it could be sculpture, or music, or many other types of art. But what sparks your imagination? The other thing that we will do, which Amy will help us organize, or she'll organize it for us, is eventually we will have each of the three participants, Joyce, Corinne, and Josh, to be each in a different breakout room so that you each can talk to them about their poem and their presentation. So the first poem will be Dear Paul Newman, and it's going to be presented by Corinne. So Corinne, please.
28 years ago today, my daughter gave me a book of poetry called When I Am an Old Woman, I Shall Wear Purple. Back then, I thought I was way too young to qualify for such a thing. But as it turned out, that book contained 2 or 3 of my favorite poems. The poem I'm going to read for you today is called Dear Paul Newman. It was written by a little-known poet named Marie Kennedy Robbins. I picture the woman whose voice you're going to hear in the poem as maybe a once fetching, maybe even provocative woman, now 80-ish, who lives mainly in her slightly off-kilter mind these days. Perhaps she wears bright rouge on her cheeks and red lipstick that goes beyond the borders of her lips and big alarming eyebrows on her forehead. But as I read the poem, imagine who you think this woman is. Dear Paul Newman, after all these years, it's over between you and me. There's a younger man. I get to see him 5 times a week, and he tries to bring me the world. I worried a lot about your racing them fast cars, your beer drinking, the fact that the color of your eyes is fading a little with age. Them eyes always reminded me of Ed Kaselka, who sat next to me in American history. When you and Ed turned them blues on me, it sure made my pilot light blaze up. When reporters asked why you was faithful to Joanne, you once said, why should I go out for hamburger when I can have steak at home? Now that Joanne is looking so plain, I wonder if you're going to Wendy's. Paul, baby, it was fun. And I'll never forget your spaghetti sauce, but I gotta move on. I'm the same age as you, but in the dark, George Clooney will never notice. I chose this poem in part because our theme for these Sunday services this month is imagination, and that lady certainly enjoys a vivid imagination. But the poem also invites you to play with the idea of who this woman was, whether she reminds you of somebody you know, or whether she could be you in a few years. For me, it reminded me of my Aunt Isabel, who had 3 different husbands, and at her 100th birthday party announced that she had a new boyfriend who was coming to visit soon. But I also picked this poem because I enjoy poetry that provides a little levity, a little wry humor, a touch of irony maybe, and a story. So thank you for letting me introduce my poem to you.
Thank you so very much, Corinne. Much appreciated. And I know people will look forward to hearing more from you. Now, Josh is going to present a poem called Grandma. So Josh, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this poem is Grammar by Tony Hoagland, and Tony Hoagland was an American poet. He lived from 1953 to 2018 when he unfortunately died of pancreatic cancer. And I don't know his poetry well. I only know this poem really, although I've read a few others. He has a lot of collections, but my favorite title is a collection of poetry called What Narcissism Means to Me. I just don't, what a brilliant title that is. And so I'm gonna read the poem to you and talk a little bit about it and then read it again. So here it is, Grammar by Tony Hoagland. Maxine, back from a weekend with her boyfriend, smiles like a big cat and says that she's a conjugated verb. She's been doing the direct object with a second person pronoun named Phil. And when she walks into the room, everybody turns. Some kind of light is coming from her head. Even the geraniums look curious, and the bees, if they were here, would buzz suspiciously around her hair, looking for the door in her corona. We're all attracted to the perfume of fermenting joy. We've all tried to start a fire, and one day maybe it'll blaze up on its own. In the meantime, she is the one today among us most able to bear the idea of her own beauty. And when we see it, we do what is natural. We take our burned hands out of our pockets and clap. I don't know why I never used to kind of have trouble getting through this poem, but now I do. I don't know. There's something so beautiful about it to me. What I really respond to in it is this. Well, two ideas really. One is this idea that in each of us there's something that responds to joy, to aliveness, to kind of the true best experiences in life. So I'm now being attacked by a cat. There's something in us that responds to that, even if we can't have it ourselves, we can recognize it. And there's a way in which if we allow ourselves to be with someone in their joy, it doesn't really matter what that joy is about. It affects us. That part of us that wants to be alive, that wants to love, that wants to be in connection, that wants to feel like, wow, there is something about this universe that I'm connected to and is supporting me. That part resonates in us. Some of you have heard me tell the story about going to a congregation out in the middle of the state in Harrisburg or nearby Center County, and hearing a guy tell a story about how much he loves cement. And the story this guy told about how much he loved cement was horrible. I mean, it was no point. He built the wall of cement and then it fell down and he built it again. But it was riveting because this guy loved cement. I mean, it was really true. And I don't care about cement, but I was riveted because I could tell he loved cement and he was so honest about it. So there's that thing in us that responds. Like you can imagine this woman walking in and she's not trumpeting what happened, really. I mean, she's not. This isn't a Facebook posting of, here, look how great I am. This is like, she can't kind of hold it in. It's bubbling out of her. Everything notices, the plants, the bees, everything would notice that this is happening with her. It's just alive. And so we're there and we respond to it. So I love that idea. And the second thing that I really love about it is this this line, which is actually, it's related to our opening words today. I didn't know that was going to happen. The line that I love is, she is the one today most able to bear the idea of her own beauty. And there's a prayer that maybe some of you have heard, Macrina Wiedeker. She's a Benedictine nun. She's passed away now, but she lived in Oklahoma, I think it was. But she had this beautiful prayer. It goes, "Oh God, help me to believe the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is." And that, we all talk about how hard it is to face the difficult truths of ourselves, but really in some ways, I think it's harder to let ourselves feel the light and feel the beauty. And so this poem to me really shows that when you let yourself feel that real beauty of yourself, it's an act of kindness to the world because it draws that out of everybody else. So I'm going to read it one more time. Maxine, back from a weekend with her boyfriend, smiles like a big cat and says that she's a conjugated verb. She's been doing the direct object with a second person pronoun named Phil. And when she walks into the room, everybody turns. Some kind of light is coming from her head. Even the geraniums look curious, and the bees, if they were there, would buzz suspiciously around her hair, looking for the door in her corona. We're all attracted to the perfume of fermenting joy. We've all tried to start a fire, and one day maybe it'll blaze up on its own. In the meantime, she is the one today among us, most able to bear the idea of her own beauty. And when we see it, what we do is natural. We take our burned hands out of our pockets and clap. Thanks.
Thank you so very much, Josh. And now we will have Joyce speak about one of my very favorite poets, and perhaps yours as well. Joyce.
Whenever I have something that I have to read, like a benediction or a prayer before lunch, or I'm not sure. There we go. Mary Oliver is my go-to person to find something spiritual in the ordinary. She has a tendency to sit in the airport and be able to take the soul out of people that she watches, and she tends to be able to explain them to you. She is able to take a walk in the woods, which she did a lot, and take the spiritual and put it into a swan, who she asks, "Tell me, what will you do with your one wild and precious life?" She's able to walk on the porch, say good morning to the sun, and touch me because she says she wakes up early. I had trouble finding a favorite Mary Oliver poem that I like, because I like so many of them. And this one in particular is something that I do very often in the summertime. And I've watched other people do. And this poem, every time I hear it, reminds me of people that I love. So I'm delighted to be able to read this poem to you today. Let me tell you a little bit before I do about Mary Oliver. She's from Ohio, and as a teenager, she spent an awful lot of time in Cook's Forest and started writing poetry about walks in her Ohio home, which is near Cleveland, and Cook's Forest. And that's what first attracted me to her, because wow, I live near Cook's Forest. She spent most of her adult life in Portsmouth, Massachusetts, in a very artsy community. She was born in 1935 and died just 2 years ago in 2019. So this is Mary Oliver. "Freshen the flowers," she said. "So I put them in the sink, for the cool porcelain was tender, and took out the tattered and cut each stem on a slant, trimmed the black and raggy leaves, and set them all, roses, delphiniums, daisies, iris, lilies, and more whose names I don't know, in bright new water. Gave them a bounce upward at the end to let them take their own choice of position, the wheels, the spurs, the little sheds of the buds. It took to do this perhaps 15 minutes. 15 minutes of music with nothing playing. My favorite part is 15 minutes of music with nothing playing. And that echoes in my mind each time I freshen the flowers or I'm doing it for the first time. 15 minutes of music with nothing playing. Poem makes me think of Mary, Miriam, Peggy, all of the flower ladies and all of the people that I know who are flower show judges and things like that. We spend 15 minutes of nothing but with music playing. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Joyce. So the question again for breakout rooms is, what art form sparks your imagination? Or alternatively, you could talk to the presenters today and talk about the poems that they shared, and well, anything else that's on your mind. So Amy will get us sorted out here into the rooms, and enjoy. And thank you again to all three of you. Well, thank you and welcome back, everyone. I hope it was a good conversations and that you had some good conversation about the poetry and how things are going. So we have a few joys and sorrows to share today. Candle of remembrance for Peg, is it Clyons? Am I correct with that? Whose obituary was in the paper this week, and this was from, see who this was from Amelia. And then from Rick, a candle of joy for the UU Parish Board that we met yesterday, held a retreat, and Rick expresses his deep appreciation for the wisdom, energy, and care each board member brings to our work. I will definitely second that. Let us have one more candle that we will light in a virtual way for any joys and sorrows that are in your hearts but left unexpressed. So now let us take a time of spoken and silent reflection. And I would invite us not only to think of the joys and sorrows that we've shared this morning, and also those in your hearts, but also all the troubles and courageousness of people around the world as we all deal with the pandemic, with the violence, with the confusion about where the world is, for the climate crisis, for the racial reckoning that we in this country are doing. That's a lot. And so I'd invite us to send appreciation and hope for all those in the world who are wrestling, like us, with the problems that are facing us. Let's have about a minute of quiet together. So Joshua is willing to read the closing and chalice extinguishing words while I extinguish the chalice. Joshua?
Think left and think right and think low and think high. Oh, the things you can think, the things you can think up, if only you try.
Thank you everyone for being here today, and a special thanks to Joyce, Corrine, and Joshua for sharing the poetry. And now we will go into the coffee hour breakout rooms where we can continue conversations. So thank you again.